We are today in Pasadena at the Rose Bowl, and we're just going to run you through the rig a little bit, just kind of show you the stage, what's going on. As you can see, a really wide stage. This is about 180, 190 feet wide, which kind of proposes a challenge with antennas. I think it's about 80 feet to the downstage edge of the snake pit. So we've got a lot of area to cover, and what we've done is gone to the RF venue antennas that are a helical antenna. As you can see, we've got huge video screens here that emit some terrible RF noise and stuff. It really doesn't help us out at all. So that's kind of been the big challenge on this thing, other than just getting around the larger size stage, doing guitar changes and stuff like that. So where we've put the two antennas, we have one here and another one on the other side. We've got a real wide pattern, so we're trying to kind of shoot this one across the stage that way. The band uses the whole stage, but we're using the Shure UR4D stuff, and it's been pretty good, pretty constant. So this is the way the band has to come. There's one on stage left and one on stage right. So James and I do a lot of changes either on stage or in here or back here where I work. So essentially we'll just follow the signal flow. We all share one pair of antennas through a Shure antenna distribution unit in a rack over here. So one of the things we had to sort of shoot for was low profile out on the stage, super clean. Everyone's done a lot of work on trying to make everything look really nice, and with all the white and everything, you know, we couldn't have a whole like antenna farm up there. So we decided to put these in the best spot that we could, a little trial and error, and we're sharing those for James' wireless, Robert's, and Kirk's wireless as well. So we just take a split all from there. What we do then is we'll come back to the rack. We go into the Shure units. From there, we go into the small RJM line mixer, mini line mixer, which you should check out. For a little small unit, it's got tons of ins and outs, and so we use that to sum the output of our wireless. Basically, we use two channels on each player, so we're flip-flopping between the first channel and the second channel when we're doing guitar changes, when we have time to figure that out. I'll mute the rig sometimes if I'm on the same channel. So what we do is we sum out of there. If you don't do that and just go through an AB box, you're going to lose at least 6 dB, which, as you might know, when you're trying to hit the front end of an amp, even if it's an Axe Effects, losing 6 dB wouldn't want to do that. So it's important for us to sum those two output signals, and before we go into the GCX, the old tried and true GCX audio switcher. And what I do with this is I'm basically using just a couple of loops on this to send either to the first fractal or the second fractal. And on the first fractal, I have James' main heavy sounds, which is comprised of two different amps, a Mesa Boogie amp and a Diesel amp. Two separate cabinets, so monitors in front of house and recording, they all still get two different amp sounds that they can blend and mix together. And so what I'm doing then is switching analog into the second fractal, which has his clean sounds or any kind of sounds that are sort of small Fender combo ampy kind of stuff, like the beginning of Page, or our straight clean sounds, you know, like in One and Nothing Else Matters and all of that. So rather than sending signal to both of them and switching and muting those, I'm still kind of doing it analog style, because that it feels good and there's no gaps, and that's kind of what we're trying to eliminate, is any sort of gaps with switching presets or anything like that. So I take out of the second output, I send an aux out to the Matrix amp, which is just a really solid, great solid state amp that's just takes a beating, and when you turn them up just to the right level, they jump, and they're really nice, and they've been really hanging in there for us. So it's a big change using those compared to tube amps, which, you know, get really fussy, especially when you're shipping them constantly, you know, over the road, over the air, in a C can. And so that consistency and knowing that all the effects, we use all the effects, amps, cabinets, everything's coming out of the Axe Effects. And it's just knowing that that stuff is going to work exactly the same every day. It just allows you to spend more time worrying about other stuff like keeping up on guitar maintenance and doing all the other stuff we got to do around here to make the show go. Yeah, so out of the Matrix amp, then I send up to the 2 cabinets you may have seen on stage. 2 Boogie 4x12 cabinets with vintage 30s in them, and I separate it, 1 cabinet for the Boogie, 1 cabinet for the Diesel, and I turn them up pretty good. James will sort of get in the zone since it's such a big stage. We have guitar coming out of the monitors, of course, and all the mic positions, which I think there are 9 on this. And James will kind of, when he wants to get in the zone or feel it, he'll come in front of the cabinets and either get sustain or feedback if he needs it, or just kind of jam and making the guitar active on stage, is moving some air, and so the guy, it still feels like a real live rig, and it just sounds amazing. And what I love about that as well is you know, with an analog amp, once you get past the master volume, you're a little bit set in as far as tone goes, but with the Axe Effects, you know, all of your sound is there. It's just a matter of turning it up or turning it down and not having the low end get squishy or not keep up, especially when we tune down into D, lower frequencies and stuff. The Axe Effects just keeps up and spits it out, and the Matrix keeps up, just spits it right out. So it's so much more solid in the low end. And you know, James' guitar sound, you really got to have all the low end, all the pick sound, and you know, he just likes all the mid-range still in his face, so everything keeps up really well. Furman power supplies, and just trying to keep a constant voltage, which can be difficult with generators and super long feeder runs and all that, so we're trying to do what we can to make sure that power is as stable as we can get it, especially when you get overseas. Here in the States it's a little easier, but some of these places you start switching to 50 hertz, you know, versus 60 hertz, and when Mick turns the PA up and the kick drum hits, and it's just, the PA just eats so much of the available power. It's pretty crazy to watch the current change. All right, so James guitars on this summer tour. Starting out, giving him the new ESP Vulture. It's really light, fast. He has it for the first 2 songs, so he can just kind of go out there and thrash on it, and super fast. It's light, so he feels like he's got a lot of energy when the show starts, so he can really rail on this thing. And it takes a fair bit of abuse and hangs in there, of course. So this is kind of the latest, newest one, so I like to get it in his hands right away and give him a good feeling right off the bat. Gibson V, that kind of harkens back to the old days. I'll give him that on some older thrash songs, Battery and stuff like that. There's a kind of a spot in the set that allows for an early album kind of thrasher, so I usually send that out there. Of course, we've got the usual ESP Truckster shapes, White Cross and the Blackster. Of course, the white Snakebite gets a lot of use, a little bit more use than it used to with just the way the set's put together on this run. Of course, the Ken Lawrence, tried and true. Like to give this to him for, you know, the real good, the clean sound stuff. These things have been here since I've been here, and can't get rid of them. This is awesome. We've got a newer ESP Camo Snakebite, which is pretty cool. It was hand painted in Japan. And he's been abusing this quite a lot lately. So this is I've got this tuned down to D for Sad But True. So at the end of that song, he kind of gets down on the ground and smashes it on the stage and the wedges and does a lot of terrible things to a guitar that you don't want to see. Well, that's getting some good use. And each guitar, of course, we kind of have a backup on our second channel, so that if he's out there playing and something goes wrong, I can pick up a similar shaped guitar on the other frequency, turn it on as I run up there and do a switch without sort of any other kind of interruptions or anything. The other thing we're doing that's a little tricky is the digital acoustic thing on this tour. So this has the auto-tune, the ATG guitar chipset in it. And so we took the Line 6 electronics out and put that in. So takes a little programming, of course. And what I'm doing is, since James wants to play both a 6-string sound and a 12-string sound, what I have to do is send a MIDI program change message to it while he's playing it. So I do that via the little MIDI Jet Pro, which is wireless MIDI unit. So there's there's 2 units that talk to each other on a private network, and the MIDI is bidirectional, but I'm just kind of sending out program changes out to the guitar out on stage so that he can do, like on Fade to Black, he'll do the intro on the 6-string sound until it kicks into the the verse part. It's big, huge 12-string sound. So there's no other way to do that basically than how I'm doing it right now. One last thing for me to cover, I think, is just using the Peterson app for a tuner on an iPad. It's just, with so much stuff going on, lights and distractions and stuff, it's so great to just have a huge display. I can't look at these small displays anymore with small letters, and we've kind of been enjoying that. It's with aging eyes, it's probably a good idea. I recommend it if you're tired of squinting at a tuner. And I guess that's about most of it, and we'll turn you over to Justin.
This is my world, very similar to what you've seen on the other side of the stage. Obviously all these guitars are Kirk's, largely ESP and LTDs. This is a fun little guitar we got in the summer, just Aluha Ghouls we call this. And we have other guitars that have no whammy bars. We have just a Cherry V, and these are mainly alternate tunings. A slide guitar for Paige. Probably the first we'll start with tonight is the Mummy, which she's had a long time, 96 I think. Then we'll probably go to this one, which is a newer one, which is a Purple Sparkle. And tonight I'm experimenting with a slightly different front pickup. This is a 60A compared to his normal 60. That's from EMG. This will be the other major guitar in rotation tonight. It's our White Zombie. Same thing, EMG pickups, ESP guitar, Ernie Ball strings, Kirk's own straps. This guitar is kind of unique because it's very original. This used to be Gary Moore's. It used to be Peter Green's from Fleetwood Mac, Gary Moore from Thin Lizzy, and on his own. And it's a very well-known guitar. One of Kirk's most original guitars, but was this Randy Rose Jackson. I think this is an 84. I'm sure there are people out there that will correct me. And that's tuned to D for Sad But True. And if you want to come around to the rack here, very similar looking rack to what the other 2 guys have. Wireless receivers. Mine is different, I have Crybaby. These are the Dunlop Crybaby rack units, stock as you would buy them in the store, because he has 5 pedals around the stage. And we have to be able to turn them on and off. And although the Fractal has built-in wah-wahs, we don't have a way of running 5 pedals from it easily. The GCX, once again, I use loop 1 to turn the wahs on and off. And I'll come back to this, but basically if you walked away from a wah and it hasn't quite turned off, I can turn it off from the pedal board very quickly and then reset. The Axe effects, same as the other side. We're using one for crunch sounds, one for clean sounds, and that allows us to switch very quickly. In songs like One, the switching is very, very tight. Fade, Unforgiven, it's very, very tight, and we can't have a slight hiccup as the amp model changes. So we looked at it and we figured this is the best way of doing it. Matrix amps, solid as a rock. Really, really guitar-friendly coloration, if you like. You do have to turn them up a little bit to make them work. There's a certain point when you turn them up right about 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock that all of a sudden it all comes to you. It just opens right up. So we'll tend to turn down the input and let the amp ride a little hot. And then that feeds those two speakers we pointed out on stage. The audio guys pick up my XLRs out of here, so they get a balanced signal here. So they're not miking up speakers, wet cardboard or dry cardboard, depending on the conditions. It's identical every day. And when we have boutique, handmade amps by the likes of Mike Fortin and everything, because they're all slightly different, they all have this slightly different character, they're never identical. And by the time you get to the fourth system on the spare, it's kind of like the 8th best amp you have. But here we have the same thing every day, and it allows Big Mick, who's dealing with a whole new environment every day, it allows recording trucks just to set their controls flat, and we've set it all up with Mike Gillies previously, so they can just pretty much set up flat, pan left and right, 0 dB, and the guitars are coming into them. It allows them to focus purely on the vocals and the drums. This is how we control the fractals and the GCX. This is the wah loop I was telling you about earlier. This is hot right now, but if he walks away from the wah, I can quickly pull it out of circuit, step over to the Crybaby rack controller, reset it, and then let it back in. Now it's turned off. These presets allow me to pull up several different effects in one go. There's a reverse delay, where with a normal reverse delay you have silence whilst the delay loads. But because of this, I've been able to get a delay that goes forwards and crossfades into reverse. So there's absolutely no difference. The signal never stops, which I couldn't do with just analog pedals. I couldn't. I'm sure somebody can. I couldn't. So I just, at the end of Puppets, I'll hit that. It'll start playing into reverse, and then we'll turn it off at the end, and I'm into another song. This is my main bread and butter preset. This covers most of the songs that we do in this worldwide set. Halo allows me to add a certain amount of pitch change for some phrases. It's basically just a lower octave. A drive, which is kind of halfway between a rhythm and a solo sound. And I kind of use that sound when James and Kirk are playing harmonies, so that it doesn't overpower James, but still gives Kirk a little more sustain as he's playing single notes, without lifting the volume so much that Big Mick has to do too much out front to keep them even. Disappear. Disappear is just used for a small doodle that Robert and Kirk do right at the very front of the thrust there. And that, if you listen to the song, there's a huge filter sound bump, wah, which I also bring this pedal out just for that, to do that. It's so quick that I can't really do it via MIDI. It's just simpler for me just to do this, and that goes straight into the expression port of the fractal and turns on the filter. Chad makes up all these for the mic stands, pick holders, Hetfield Black Fangs, a couple of city picks which Zach makes with every city on, and a Kirk Hammett Jazz 3, special shape with the little cutout V in the back.
I'm probably going through about 100 of the Black Fangs per show, just due to the number of mic stands up there and how many they throw out and everything, so we use a lot of them.